Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button because today's story is going to blow your mind. This is about how my business partner's wife tried to seduce me as part of an elaborate scheme to destroy both our lives, and how I turned the tables on her in the most devastating way possible. So let me set the scene for you. My name's David, and I've been running a successful marketing consultancy with my business partner, Marcus, for about 8 years. We started the company right out of college, built it from nothing, and by the time this story takes place, we were pulling in about $2 million a year in revenue. Marcus and I had been best friends since freshman year, and going into business together seemed like the natural next step. Marcus was married to this woman named Victoria, and let me tell you, Victoria was absolutely stunning. She was one of those women who walked into a room and every conversation stopped. Long black hair, piercing green eyes, the kind of figure that made you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. She was also incredibly charming, with this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the world when she talked to you. In the early days of our business, Victoria would come by the office frequently. She'd bring homemade lunch for Marcus, chat with our employees, and always made a point to ask how I was doing. David, you work too hard, she'd say with this concerned smile. When's the last time you took a real vacation? She seemed genuinely interested in my well-being, which I appreciated since running a business was incredibly stressful and I didn't have much of a social life. Over the years, Victoria and I developed what I thought was a nice friendship. She'd remember details about my life, projects I was working on, family events, even my favorite coffee order. When Marcus had to travel for business, she'd sometimes stop by the O's with coffee and pastries for everyone, always making sure to bring my preferred dark roast with no sugar. About 2 years ago, I started noticing that Victoria's visits were becoming more frequent and her attention more focused on me. She'd linger by my desk, asking detailed questions about my work, complimenting my shirts or cologne. "That color really brings out your eyes," she'd say, touching my arm lightly. At first, I thought she was just being friendly, but there was something about the way she looked at me that made me uncomfortable. The situation escalated about 6 months ago when Marcus had to fly to Los Angeles for a 3-week client project. Victoria started showing up at the office almost daily, usually in the late afternoon when most of our employees had gone home. She'd bring dinner, claiming she didn't want to eat alone, and we'd end up talking for hours about everything from business strategy to personal philosophy. During one of these conversations, Victoria opened up about her marriage in ways that made me deeply uncomfortable. "Marcus is so focused on work lately," she said, sitting closer to me than necessary on the office couch. "Sometimes I feel like I'm invisible in my own home. He comes home exhausted and just wants to watch TV or check emails. We barely talk anymore, and we certainly don't." She paused meaningfully. "Connect the way we used to." I tried to redirect the conversation back to safer topics, but Victoria seemed determined to share intimate details about her relationship with Marcus. She talked about feeling neglected, unappreciated, and lonely. "You're such a good listener, David," she said, placing her hand on my knee. "Marcus never really hears me the way you do." The physical contact was becoming more frequent and more inappropriate. She'd brush against me when walking past my desk, touch my shoulder when laughing at my jokes, and find excuses to get close enough that I could smell her perfume, an expensive, intoxicating scent that seemed designed to scramble a man's thinking. One evening, about a month into Marcus's LA trip, Victoria showed up at the office around 8 p.m., wearing a dress that was clearly not appropriate for a casual dinner between friends. It was a deep red number that hugged every curve, with a neckline that left very little to the imagination. She'd obviously spent time on her hair and makeup, and she moved with a confidence that suggested she knew exactly what effect she was having. I brought Italian, she said, setting down bags from an expensive restaurant downtown, and wine. I thought we deserved to celebrate. The Morrison account closed today, right? We had indeed closed a major deal that day, but celebrating alone with my business partner's wife while he was out of town seemed like a terrible idea. Still, Victoria had already opened the wine and was setting out the food, chatting animatedly about the deal and asking insightful questions about our growth strategy. As the evening progressed and the wine flowed, Victoria became more direct in her flirtation. She talked about how impressed she was with my business acumen, how attractive confidence was in a man, how she'd always found intelligence more appealing than conventional good looks. Marcus is handsome, she said, but you have something deeper. There's a complexity to you that's incredibly appealing. When I tried to deflect her compliments and steer the conversation back to business, Victoria became more bold. David, can I ask you something personal? She said, moving closer on the couch. When's the last time you were with someone? Really with someone, not just some casual hookup, but someone who appreciated everything you have to offer. I told her that wasn't an appropriate conversation to have, but she persisted. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, she said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. I just think you're an incredible man who deserves to be appreciated properly, and I can't stop thinking about what that would be like. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Victoria was sitting so close I could feel the warmth radiating from her body, her green eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my heart race, despite every rational thought telling me this was wrong. Victoria, we can't do this, I said, standing up abruptly and walking to the window. Marcus is my best friend and business partner. This would destroy everything we've built. But Victoria followed me, placing her hand on my back. Marcus doesn't have to know, she whispered. He's 3,000 miles away, completely absorbed in his project. And honestly, David, he's taken both of us for granted. You pour your heart into this business while he gets half the credit, and I take care of everything at home while he barely acknowledges I exist. She moved around to face me, standing close enough that I had to look down into her eyes. We both deserve better than being ignored by someone who's supposed to appreciate us. I stepped back, putting distance between us. This isn't about what we deserve. This is about loyalty and trust and doing the right thing. Victoria laughed, but there was an edge to it. The right thing. David, when's the last time you did something for yourself instead of everyone else? You work 18-hour days building a company where Marcus gets equal credit for half the effort. You haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years. You don't even date because you're so committed to being the responsible one. She was touching on insecurities I'd been trying to ignore. It was true that Marcus had been less involved in the day-to-day operations lately, and it was also true that I'd been carrying more of the workload, but that didn't justify betraying his trust. Maybe Marcus doesn't appreciate what he has, Victoria continued, stepping closer again. But I see exactly who you are. I see how hard you work, how much you care, how much you sacrifice for everyone else. Don't you think you deserve to be wanted, really wanted? The way she was looking at me, the way she spoke about seeing and wanting me was intoxicating in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Victoria was right about one thing. I hadn't been with anyone in a long time, and I was lonely in ways I rarely allowed myself to acknowledge. But something about her approach was setting off alarm bells in my head. The timing seemed too convenient, her arguments too polished, her seduction too calculated. This felt less like spontaneous attraction and more like a performance. Victoria, I think you should go, I said, moving toward the door. This isn't fair to any of us. Her demeanor shifted instantly. The sultry seductress disappeared, replaced by someone cold and calculating. Fair? She said, her voice sharp. You want to talk about fair, Dave? Let me tell you what's not fair. She grabbed her purse and pulled out a manila folder, tossing it onto my desk. What's not fair is that you've been stealing from Marcus for 2 years. I stared at her, completely confused. What are you talking about? The Henderson account, she said. The Morrison deal, the Blackstone contract, all clients you brought in through personal connections, but you've been hiding the real value of those deals and skimming money into private accounts. My blood ran cold. That's completely untrue. Every penny that comes into this company is properly documented and split according to our partnership agreement. Victoria smiled, but it wasn't pleasant. That's not what the financial records show. That's not what the emails in your computer show. That's not what the bank statements I have copies of show. She opened the folder and spread documents across my desk. Bank statements, altered contracts, forged emails, a complete fabrication of evidence suggesting I'd been embezzling from our company for years. This is insane, I said, looking through the papers. These are fake. You've altered these documents. Prove it, Victoria said. Because when Marcus sees these along with the security footage of us having intimate dinners alone in the office while he's out of town, what do you think he's going to believe? His loyal wife, who discovered her husband's best friend was stealing from him, or the partner who's been secretly betraying him for years? The pieces were finally clicking together. Victoria hadn't been trying to seduce me because she was attracted to me or unhappy in her marriage. This entire 6-month campaign had been designed to compromise me, to create a situation where she could destroy my reputation and my relationship with Marcus. Why? I asked. What do you possibly gain from this? Victoria's mask slipped completely now, revealing someone I'd never seen before. Marcus and I are getting divorced, she said coldly, but our prenup severely limits what I can claim in the settlement. However, if I can prove that his business partner has been stealing from him and that the company's value is much higher than reported, I can challenge the prenup and go after half of everything. She continued, her voice becoming more vicious. You see, David, I've been planning this for over a year. I hired a forensic accountant to analyze your business, and I know exactly how much this company is really worth, but I needed a way to get Marcus to audit the books properly and discover all those hidden assets. So you created fake evidence of embezzlement. I created a compelling narrative, she corrected. A trusted partner secretly stealing from the company, covering his tracks by underreporting revenue and hiding money in offshore accounts. When this all comes out, Marcus will be forced to do a complete financial audit, which will reveal the company's true value, and then, in the divorce proceedings, I'll be entitled to half of his share. I was staring at this woman I thought I knew, realizing she was a complete stranger. And if I don't cooperate with your plan, Victoria shrugged. Then I released the security footage of our romantic dinners, along with the financial evidence of your embezzlement. Your reputation is destroyed, your partnership with Marcus ends, and you probably face criminal charges for fraud. Oh, and I still get my divorce settlement, because the audit will happen anyway once Marcus sees the evidence. She gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. But if you do cooperate, if you confess to Marcus that you've been hiding assets and agree to a financial settlement that compensates him for your betrayal, then this can all be handled quietly. You'll lose some money and probably your friendship, but you won't go to prison. Victoria left that night confident she had me cornered, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly who she was dealing with. You see, I hadn't built a successful business by being naive or trusting. I'd learned early in my career to document everything, trust but verify, and always have a backup plan. And Victoria's 6-month seduction campaign had been so obviously calculated that I'd been gathering evidence of my own. The first thing I'd done about 2 months into her increasingly inappropriate visits was install hidden security cameras throughout the office. Not just the obvious ones that she knew about, but hidden ones that captured audio and had night vision capabilities. Every conversation we'd had, every inappropriate comment, every attempt at seduction was recorded in high definition. I'd also been documenting her visits, her comments about her marriage, and her increasingly desperate attempts to compromise me. I had emails from Marcus talking about how much he loved his wife and how excited he was about their future together, communications that directly contradicted her claims about their marriage being over. But most importantly, I'd been suspicious enough of her motives that I'd hired my own investigator to look into Victoria's background and activities. What I discovered was that Victoria hadn't just planned to destroy me, she'd been systematically destroying Marcus's life for over a year. My investigator found evidence that Victoria had been having multiple affairs throughout their marriage, including an ongoing relationship with a divorce attorney who specialized in high net worth cases. She'd been secretly photographing documents from Marcus's home office, accessing his computer to copy files, and building a case for divorce that would maximize her settlement. The forged financial documents she'd shown me were just one part of an elaborate fraud scheme. She'd been working with her lover, the divorce attorney, to create a false narrative of hidden assets and embezzlement that would force a complete audit of our business and reveal every penny we'd ever earned. Her plan was brilliant in its cruelty: destroy my friendship with Marcus by framing me for embezzlement, force Marcus to audit the business and discover its true value, then divorce him and claim half of everything. She'd walk away with millions while leaving both Marcus and me financially and emotionally devastated. But Victoria had made one critical error. She'd assumed I was just another lonely, gullible man who could be manipulated through a combination of seduction and blackmail. She had no idea I'd been 3 steps ahead of her for months. My counterattack was swift and devastating. First, I called Marcus in Los Angeles and told him I needed him to come home immediately for an emergency business meeting. I didn't give him details, just said it was urgent and involved Victoria. While Marcus was flying back, arranged for copies of all my evidence to be delivered to Victoria's divorce attorney, along with a letter from my legal team explaining that we had documentation of fraud, adultery, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. We gave him 24 hours to withdraw from representing Victoria and report her attempted fraud to the state bar, or face criminal charges himself as an accessory. Next, I contacted the 3 men Victoria had been having affairs with. Yes, there were 3, including her divorce attorney. I provided each of them with evidence of her relationships with the others, along with documentation showing how she'd been using information gathered from each affair to build her divorce case. The chaos that followed was spectacular. Her divorce attorney immediately withdrew from her case and reported her attempted fraud to avoid criminal charges himself. The other two men, realizing they'd been used as pawns in Victoria's scheme, provided additional evidence of her manipulation and deception. But the masterpiece was the confrontation with Marcus and Victoria together. Marcus arrived home to find me, Victoria, and a room full of lawyers and investigators waiting in our conference room. I had prepared a complete presentation with video evidence, financial records, and witness testimony that laid out Victoria's entire scheme in devastating detail. Marcus, I began, your wife has been planning to destroy both of our lives for over a year. She's been having multiple affairs, forging financial documents, and attempting to frame me for embezzlement as part of an elaborate scheme to steal millions from you in your divorce. Victoria tried to maintain her composure, claiming I was lying and that this was all an attempt to cover up my actual embezzlement. But as I played the security footage of her confessing her entire plan, her face went pale. The recording was crystal clear. Victoria admitting to the fake documents, explaining her plan to frame me, detailing how she intended to manipulate the divorce proceedings to maximize her settlement, her own words condemning her completely. Marcus sat in stunned silence as he watched his wife of 8 years revealed as someone completely different from who he thought she was, the woman he loved, trusted, and planned to spend his life with, had been systematically plotting to destroy him. But I wasn't finished. I presented evidence of her affairs, her financial manipulations, her theft of confidential business documents, and her attempts to suborn perjury from multiple witnesses. By the time I was done, Victoria wasn't just facing divorce, she was facing criminal charges for fraud, extortion, theft, and conspiracy. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and brutal. Victoria's prenup, which she'd been trying to circumvent, actually protected Marcus from any claims on his assets, especially in cases involving adultery or fraud. She walked away from the marriage with nothing except mounting legal bills and potential prison time. Her divorce attorney was disbarred for his involvement in the scheme. The other men she'd been manipulating provided testimony that helped prosecutors build a comprehensive case against her. Victoria eventually pleaded guilty to multiple felonies to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, but she still served 18 months in federal prison. As for Marcus and me, the experience actually strengthened our friendship and business partnership. He was grateful that I'd protected him from Victoria's scheme and impressed by the thoroughness of my investigation. We implemented new security measures for the business and learned valuable lessons about trusting people's actions over their words. The company continued to thrive, and Marcus eventually remarried, this time to a woman whose background we thoroughly vetted and who signed an ironclad prenup. He learned to be more cautious about who he trusted with intimate details about our business and his personal life. Victoria's attempt to seduce me had been part of a calculated plan to steal millions and destroy 2 lifelong friendships, but her arrogance and underestimation of her targets led to her complete downfall. She thought she was the smartest person in the room, but she was actually the most naive. The experience taught me that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who disguise themselves as victims. Victoria presented herself as a lonely, neglected wife seeking connection, when she was actually a calculating criminal seeking to steal everything Marcus and I had worked to build. Today, Marcus and I run a company worth over $10 million. We've learned to trust carefully, verify everything, and never underestimate the importance of having evidence when dealing with people who might not be who they claim to be. Victoria, last I heard, was working as a waitress in a different state, still paying off legal debts and trying to rebuild a reputation that her own greed and cruelty had destroyed. Her plan to steal millions ended with her losing everything, including her freedom, her marriage, and any chance of the luxurious lifestyle she thought she deserved. Sometimes justice isn't just about punishment, it's about protection. By stopping Victoria's scheme, I didn't just save myself from false accusations, I protected Marcus from a devastating betrayal and prevented her from victimizing other successful men with her calculated seduction and fraud. That's the power of preparation, documentation, and never underestimating your opponent's capacity for deception. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them and be ready to prove it. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you've ever dealt with manipulation or false accusations, remember that evidence beats emotion every time. Subscribe for more stories about justice, revenge, and people who thought they were smarter than they actually were.